Hi, how are you? Let's discuss Karl Marx's conception of alienation. Karl Marx is one of the most influential thinkers in entire human history. His thought is wide-ranging and it has had a massive influence, especially in philosophy, politics, economics, and sociology. His writings have inspired many social and political movements, including socialism, communism, and labor movements. Marx argued that throughout history, social and economic systems have evolved through class struggle, in that the current capitalist system is based on the exploitation of the working class by the capitalist class. So, his first major objection argues that capitalism is essentially alienating. The second major criticism claims that capitalism is fundamentally exploitative. Generally speaking, Marx's theory of alienation harks back to his earlier philosophy, appearing in the chapter *𝐦𝐨𝐫𝐞 in his Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts of 1844. There was an unfinished work that was unpublished at the time of his death, and his theory of exploitation belongs to his later philosophy, Das Kapital. It's a matter of a scholarly debate to what extent this progression in his thinking represented a substantive change in his position or merely a shift in emphasis. We'll not get into that for now. This video focuses exclusively on Marx's theory of alienation, which is based on Marx's specific claims about both economics and human nature. Let's start by looking at Marx's analysis of capitalism. For Marx, the idea of the means of production is a vital economic category. The means of production include nearly everything needed to produce commodities, including natural resources, factories, and machinery. In a capitalist economy, as opposed to a communist or socialist economy, the means of production are privately owned, as when a business person owns a factory, a farm, or a mall, or whatever. To keep things simple, I follow Marx in speaking of business being directed primarily at producing commodities. So, of course, Marx was right in long before the development of an extensive service sector, a characteristic of later capitalism. However, his general analysis can also be applied to service industries in capitalist economies. All you need to do is to tweak some language. Also, in classical political economy, a capitalist is someone who owns the means of production and not merely someone who is in favor of capitalism. Then let's look at Marx's concept of our biological being. Marx examines capitalism and its class divisions from the perspective of their being suited to human nature. Because humans are biological beings and not just free floating non matter minds, we have to interact with and transform the natural world in order to survive. This emphasis on biological incarnation distinguishes the Marxist conception of human nature from those which count rationality as the distinguishing feature of human beings, a feature which would equally apply to non matter minds. But what separates us from all other animals like sparrows, insects, or fish, which all interact with and impact the world based on instinct, is that we transform the world intentionally and freely. Or as Marx writes in Estranged Labor, echoing Hegel, conscious life activity directly distinguishes man from animal activity. It is just because of this that he is a species being. Thus, Marx contends that the essence of a human being is to deliberately and freely transform the world in order to meet our needs. That's the essence of human being. Like many other philosophers, Marx believes that excellently doing what makes us uniquely human is the true source of accomplishment. We can now proceed to discuss Marx's claim that capitalism is alienating. I think we have had sufficient background to discuss it. The general notion of alienation is simple. Something is alienating when it makes someone feel that they are different and not part of a group. Because our species being is our essence as human beings, it should be something that is familiar. Marx thinks that to the extent that we are unable to act in accordance with our species being, we become disconnected from our own nature. So, if work in a capitalist society inhibits the realization of our species being, then work is to that extent alienating, right? So here we're talking about whether workers, the proletariat, are alienated under capitalism. However, Marx believes that the bourgeoisie experience creates its own form of alienation, as he explains in Alienation and Social Classes. And because we are alienated from our own nature, alienation is not just a subjective feeling, it's about an objective reality. Marx distinguishes three specific ways to describe how workers are alienated from their species being under capitalism. One, workers are alienated from other human beings. A capitalist economy requires its workers to compete with one another for jobs and raises. But just as competition among businesses brings down the price of goods, competition between workers drive down wages. So the one who benefits from this market competition is not the worker, but the capitalist. So it's not only economically detrimental to workers, it also estranges them from one another. Marx argues that humans are free beings and can collaborate in order to transform the world in more refined and beneficial ways. As such, they should see one another as allies, especially in the face of a capitalist class that seeks to undermine worker solidarity for its own benefit. But under capitalism, workers see one another as opposing competition. Now, if that sounds not entirely true to you today, it was exactly so in the highly oppressive industrialist society of Marx's time. Workers' unions, labor laws, and social benefits that you see in capitalist societies today have all arisen under the influence of Marx's ideas. The second thing he says is workers are alienated from the products of their labor. Capitalists need not do any labor themselves. Just by dint of owning the means of production, they control the profits of the firm they own. The profits they make come from selling the goods entirely produced by workers. Thus, the workers' labor strengthens the capitalists whose interests are opposed to that of the workers. The workers do this as laborers as well as consumers by buying commodities from capitalists. This again stands in opposition to the workers' interest as a species being. Now, this balance between capital and labor is a constant pursuit of human intelligence and it's a pursuit of equality or balance. The third form of alienation, according to Marx, is that workers are alienated from the act of labor. Because capitalists own the means of production, it is they, not the workers, who decide what goods are produced, how they are produced, and in what working conditions they are produced. Consequently, work is often dull, repetitive, and even dangerous. So, while such work may be appropriate for machines or beings without the ability to consciously and freely choose how they want to work, is not suitable for human beings. Enduring this for an extended period of time means that the activity of working, which is potentially the source of human self definition and human freedom, is degraded to a necessity for staying alive. The worker, therefore, only feels themselves alienated from work, and in their work feels alienated from themselves. To conclude all this, Marx's theory of alienation provides a conceptual framework for understanding the nature and cause of these degrading work experiences, and points out that these subjective experiences are about an objective reality, and crucially, a reality we can change. While he may not have been entirely right, and most thinkers are not entirely right or right for all times. Times change, ideas evolve, but great thinkers' shadows continue to fall on the firmament of time forever or for a long time to come. That is Karl Marx. He did transform the world. So while he may not have been entirely right, Karl Marx's ideas about the exploitation of the working class and the need for economic and social justice have had a significant impact on the advent of the welfare state. That is what spurred the idea of what you see in Scandinavia or in some very welfare-oriented Western countries. So Marx's critique of capitalism and his vision provided a theoretical basis, a foundation for the development of welfare state policies. Many of the early proponents of the welfare state, such as the British economist William Beveridge, were all influenced by Marxist ideas in their understanding of the need for a more equitable distribution of wealth and resources. However, some Marxist thinkers may view the welfare state as an incomplete or insufficient solution to the problem of alienation. What do you think? Think about it. And while you do so, I'll take your leave and we'll see you next time. Thank you.